Hi friends, welcome to Mule for Learn from D. Today we are going to discuss about Mule 4 routers. So as part of this discussion, we will be talking about choice router, first successful router, round robin router, scatter gather router. Also, we will see what happens when an exception happens in scatter gather. All right. So to demonstrate Mule 4 routers, we are about to use Anypoint Studio, Postman for sending the request and receiving the response. So here, let me introduce you to the flows which we are going to use for this demonstration. So as you can see, exercise 3 is my Mule application which we are going to use for this demonstration. It is having three Mule configuration files. First one is global configuration file, which is having the listener configuration, which we are going to use in our Mule flows. Mule configuration file 1, here we have three flows in the Mule configuration file 1. First one is using choice router. So this is some basic kind of operation I am performing here, like updating the payload, setting the variable, and logging the messages, right? So let me show you other two flows also. This is the flow which is using first successful router, and here also we are going to use the similar kind of operations which we are using for choice router. Same thing we will be doing in the third flow, which is check round robin flow, but here as router we are about to use round robin. Okay, so let me show you that choice router, first successful router, and round robin, these three routers are basically single root router. All right, I repeat, choice, first successful, and round robin, these three routers are single route router. All right, so whatever path or the route we mention in these routers, among those paths only one route would be executed. All right, later in our demonstration we'll come to the scatter gather router. All right, to show you how I actually introduce the router here. So just in the Mule palette, in a flow, from if we want to add any router, Mule 4 router, then we have to just go to the core, and in the flow control section we will find that four routers are there: choice, first successful, round robin, and scatter gather. All right, so throughout this demonstration we are about to observe Mule 4 event, which is having three sections: message, variables, and exception. All right, message is also divided into two parts: attributes and payload. All right, so I have actually deployed the flow. So as you can see, it is showing as running because the terminate button is enabled. That means it is already running. All right, so we will directly go to the debug perspective, and as you can see, I have actually attached breakpoints to the first event processor of every flow, just to uh, show the paths of execution. All right, so first we'll start with choice router flow. All right, so check choice router flow. As you can see here, so this is the flow we are about to debug now, and we will see the behavior. All right, so in the Mule section, as you can see, it is showing as connected with Mule and waiting for a Mule message to arrive. All right, so here are the URLs which we are about to use, and let me tell you that we are about to use HTTP post method for this demonstration throughout all this call. All right, so and the message we are going to use is this one. All right, so let us go to Postman and send our first request. So as you can see, this is the post method we have already selected here, and this is the URL. And if we go to the body section, we will see that this is the message we are about to post to our message flow, to our Mule flow. All right. So without any delay, let us just send the request, and we'll see that the debug point would be hit. All right. So here, as you can see, the debug point is already hit, and if we see that the attribute is showing the HTTP request, which is the caller related information where from the actual request came. That means the postman related information, right? So whatever method we used, what was the URL, what was the IP address, so those all things would be shown here in the attribute section. And also the payload, if you see the payload, this is the message which actually we posted from using postman. All right, so let's move ahead and let me press F6. So here we are about to create a variable here. Now let's just move forward, and we'll see that one variable will be created. So as you can see here, one variable has been created and the value is 1. All right. So as you can see, the first one, the every route in the choice router, it is basically configured with some value, right? So it is checking whether the where route, this variable, whatever we actually set before the choice router, so that variable value it is checking, and based on the value it is about to execute any one route among the routes which we have configured for choice, right? So now if you can see the variable section, in the variable section, the where route we have configured it as 1, right? So that means it is about to execute the first route in the choice router. All right, so let us move ahead and we will see that the first route would be executed. As you can see, the debugger has entered the first route, and here we are about to set a new payload here using the set payload component. So as you can see, we have already updated the payload, and the debugger is currently outside of choice router, and it is the next component after the choice router in our Mule flow, right? So now if you can see, the payload is showing the updated value which was updated in the first route in the choice router, right? And the variables is also accessible after the choice router. All right, so now if we just move ahead, and we will see that here one response will come. If you can see, there still the response has not come to the postman, so we are about to move ahead and we will see that the response has come here as choice router as route 1. All right, now let us do some changes, and we will see that based on the variable value, there would be the respective route would be executed in the choice router, right? So we are about to update this value of this where route. We are about to update this using with the value 3. All right, so I have updated this value and I am going to apply the changes. So now we'll see that in the console, if we see, the updates are actually automatically taken, and once our flow is deployed, we will do another round of testing with the choice router flow, right? So now let us move ahead, and I am going to send another request. So here if you see, the debugger has hit, the debugger is there at the first breakpoint. So we are about to move ahead, and we'll see that the currently, if you see, the value of this variable is set to 3, right? So that means among these routers, among these routes which we have configured there in the choice router, so among those 4 routes, the third route is about to be executed, right? So now if you see, the third route is getting executed, right? So whatever, let me tell you that whatever conditions we have mentioned there in the routes, in the different routes, that means the first route is checking whether the where route variable is having the value 1 or not, right? So if the where route variable value is 1, then the first route is going to be executed, and if the value is 2 of if the where route value is 2, then the second route would be executed. If the where route variable value is 3, in that case the third route is going to be executed, right? In case any of these first three routes, the conditions which we have mentioned, if the suppose the where route variable value is 10, so in that case neither of those conditions would be matched, right? That means in that case the default route would be executed. All right, so we'll move ahead and we'll see that also. So now if you see, we have basically updated the route, updated the payload using the set payload component which is there in the route 3. All right, so if you see, the payload is basically now showing as route 3, and we will move ahead and we will see that our response is route 3 now. All right, now we will do another round of testing with this, and we'll see that the default route would be executed for this. All right, so after this one we are about to move to the next router. All right, so we are going to do another round of testing with the choice router flow, and let me check the flow is deployed. If you see, it is now showing started, right? So ready to start another testing, and now we will see that default will be executed. So if you see, the value of this pair is 10, right? That means any of these conditions which are mentioned before the default route, those all neither of those conditions would be would be matched, right? In that case the default route would be executed. So let's move ahead and we'll see that the default route has been taken by the debugger, right? So now as you can see, it is about to be the default route. All right, so this is the response we have received. That is pretty much about the choice router. And the thing is that we need to remember that it is going to check, in case of choice router, it actually checks the condition from top to bottom. All right, so if the first route, the condition for the first route is true, in that case it will never check the second route in case the first one is already found as true. All right, so we need to remember that if I set, suppose I set all the when condition in the route, suppose here, if as you can see, these are the condition for the routes, right? So if I just make it as true, right, so basically this condition, whatever I have mentioned here, it is resulting to a boolean value, right, either true or false. So in case suppose I make it as true, I just hard code it as true, boolean value true, and also the other routes which are there, if I just mention them true, that means all the routes are having apart from the except the default route, all other routes are having same condition, right? So in that case what will happen, right? So let us just check that one. So what I will do, I'll just update the value as 1, and same thing I'll do here 1, and also I will update the value from 10 to 1. All right, so now let us just save the changes and we'll see that it will be deployed automatically. Okay, so it is now deployed. Now as you can see, all the routes except the default one is having the same condition, right? So now the question is, which route would be executed? So let us see, and I am going to send another request. As you can see, the debugger is here. So we are going to move ahead and we are about to see what happens. So let me tell you that the routes which are there in the choice router, those are basically the conditions for the routes. Those routes are actually checked from top to bottom. All right, so if the first route, in case the first route condition is found matched, that case the first route would be executed and the later routes won't be checked. All right, in case the first route is not matched, that time only it will check for the second route. All right, if the second route is found matched, that time it won't check for the third route. All right, so let's check what happens when all the routes are having the same condition at their expression section. All right, So as you can see, these all are having same when condition as their root path condition. All right. So let's move ahead and we'll see that the first route would be actually executed. As you can see, though all the routes are having same condition except the default one, so except the default one, all other routes are actually having the same condition. In that case, the first route is actually executed. All right. So here, this is the thing you have to remember, that in case all the routes are having the same condition in choice router, that time the first successful one would be actually executed, right? The first route, the route which is found as matched with the condition which we have mentioned there in the condition section of the route, that will be executed. All right. So that is pretty much about choice router. Now let's move ahead and we will see the first successful router. All right. Basically, the working of first successful router is it actually works like it first tries to execute the first route, and if that route is successfully executed, that time it doesn't execute the second one, right? So it actually tries to execute the routes from top to bottom, the similar thing we already saw there in the choice router. So it first tries to execute the route 1. If the route 1 is successful, then then it will be considered as successful, and the control will go outside of to the next component which is there after the first successful, right? In case the route 1 of the first successful router is not successful, that time it will try for the second route. If the second route is also not successful, that time it will try to execute the route third route. All right. So it actually works in this way. All right. Basically here I have deliberately tried to raise an exception in the route 1 to show you that in case the first route is unsuccessful, that time it will execute the second route. All right. So let us just send a request to the flow. All right. So this is about to be the post request. So I'm just going to change the URL and I'm going to send the request. All right. So I have just sent the request, and if you see, this is the breakpoint for the first successful flow. All right. So let us move ahead and we'll see what happens. So it is trying to execute the first route. So let's see what happens. So here, as you can see, an error is about to happen in the route 1. All right. So now, as you can see, it has thrown one error, and here is the error object, as you can see here in the Mule debugger event section. So error object has been created, and as you can see, the type of the error is showing as this is the namespace and this is the identifier. So, and also the description is custom error has occurred, right? So now what will be the behavior? If we move ahead, we will see that it is trying to execute the second route because the first route actually failed, right? There was some error in the first route. That's the reason it is trying to execute the second route. All right. So now, as you can see, we have updated the payload using the set payload section in the second route of the first successful router. Now we will move ahead and we will see that this is the payload we are about to receive at the postman. All right. Also, if all the routes which are there, if neither of them are actually successful, then the first successful router will throw an exception. All right, we need to remember that. Let's move ahead and we'll see that we have received route 2 as the payload in the response. All right, so let's move ahead and we will see that what happens in the round robin. Basically, in the round robin, if you see the icon, it is showing as circular, right? That means it will try to execute the routes in a circular manner, right? That means whenever we send the first request to the check round robin flow, it will push that message to the first route. Okay. Next time, whenever the flow receives the second message, it will try to send that to the second route. Alright. Again, when the third message is received by the check round robin flow, then it will forward the round robin router forwards that message to the third route, right? And then the fourth one, it will route to the fourth one. What will happen to the fifth one? Fifth one again start from the first route. Alright, so it is like the circular manner. In circular manner, it will be executed. Alright, so this is how it works. So let us just send one request to the round robin. Alright. As you can see, this is the breakpoint which of the check round robin flow. So there the debugger is currently present. All right, so let's move ahead and we'll see that what happens. So as you can see, this is the first path it has taken, and now as you can see, this is the payload we are about to receive, and here in the postman, if we see, this is the route 1. All right, now we are about to send the second request. So we have just sent the second request, and if we just move ahead, and we'll see that the second route is being executed. So this is the response we have received, and again the third message, it will again go to the, see, the third route is taken by the debugger, right? So now if we see, this is the payload we have received at the postman. Again the fourth message we have sent, and this time it should take the fourth route, that is the default route. We have mentioned it here like this. So now we are about to receive the route default. This is the payload we are about to receive. Now the fifth message we are about to send, and we have just sent the fifth message, and now we will see that it will again start from the first, right? So this is how it works. All right, that is pretty much about check round robin, that is the round robin router. All right, so if you see, all these choice router, first successful router, and round robin, they basically executed any one route which are mentioned among the all routes which are mentioned for those routers, right? So for all these routers, only the successful execution was only any one route which we actually mentioned. That means it is the single route router. That means whatever the route we will mention there in these choice router, first successful, and round robin, any of them would be actually executed. All right, that is the thing we need to remember. Now we are about to see scatter gather, which is basically the multi route. All right, that means it will execute multiple routes which we mentioned there in scatter gather router. All right, let's move ahead and we will see how the scatter gather actually works. So here, as you can see, this is the flow, first flow we are about to use. So these are two flows we are about to use here. First one is check the scatter gather route flow, and then the second one is check scatter gather route exception flow. So first one we are about to execute, and this is the path as you can see. So I am about to send the message to scatter gather. So let me tell you that scatter gather basically whatever data or whatever message it receives, the payload which it receives, forwards that payload to all the routes which are mentioned in the scatter gather router. All right, so these details you can also get from here. So if you just hover over this, and if, as you can see, the message is showing as sends the same message to multiple message processors or outbound endpoints in parallel. All right, so you can see that the information is like the scatter gather, whatever payload or message it will receive at scatter gather, it will basically the same copy of that message would be forwarded to each route which are mentioned there in this scatter gather. All right, so I am about to send another request to scatter the new request to scatter gather flow. All right, I have just sent the request, and now we can see that the breakpoint is there, breakpoint is hit by the debugger. So now which is basically the postman specific information, and this is the payload which you have sent from the postman, right? And we will move ahead, and there in this component we are actually trying to create a variable here, and as you can see, this is the variable has been created, and now we will see that what happens to scatter gather. See, this is the payload, and we will see that this payload would be forwarded to each and every route which we have mentioned there in this scatter gather. So this is the first route, and let me tell you that this happens in parallel, all right? So but the Mule debugger, it is not able to show us the parallel execution. So what it will do, it will show us one by one. So as you can see, the first component in the route 1, it is actually executed. Now if we just move ahead, and we'll see that, see the the first component in the second route is currently it is showing. That means these two sections are actually these routes are actually getting executed in parallel, all right? So now if we just move ahead, and as you can see, the first component in the third route is actually executed. So the execution of the routes are actually happening in parallel, right? So if we just move ahead, we'll see that at any point of time, this component would be shown by the debugger, right? So let us just move ahead, and we'll see that now it is showing the first component of the fourth route, right? That means there is, I mean, these routes are actually executed in parallel, and they are basically in separate thread. And we'll move ahead, and as you can see, the debugger has completed the execution of scatter gather router. All the routes it has executed, all right? So let us just check what is the message after the execution of scatter gather. So if you see, this is a linked hash map, all right? So that means it is having some key value pair inside it. So if you remember, for choice router, for first successful router, for round robin router, for all of this, the actual payload was the same payload which we updated there, whatever payload we set there in the route, all right? So whatever payload we set there in the route, which actually executed based on the condition, so that payload was shown to the next element as it is, right? So in this logger, in case of round robin, whatever payload we set there inside the inside the router, that payload was shown as it is, right, in this logger. For first successful also the same thing happened here. Whatever payload we updated there in the router section, that payload was showing as it is. The same payload was getting shown in the next component after the router, right? But in case of scatter gather, if you see, it is not showing the exact payload. It is because as we saw that all the routes in the scatter gather were executed parallelly, and each one of those routes actually set some payload and also some values it has set. So those all is showing as the collection of those all new values. It is showing as a linked hash map in the next component, right? So you need to remember that. So let me show you another thing. If you just click on this logger component, and if you see the output section here, as you can see, the payload is showing as object of objects, right? That means it will contain the object. That means the whatever the payload and other values will be there inside the execution of each route, those things would come under this object, all right? So it will contain all those objects. As our scatter gather is currently having 4 routes, that is the reason it is showing as from 0 to 3, all right? So these 4 objects it is showing. So the it is like in the next component after this scatter gather, it will show the attributes. It is basically the object. It is basically the payload is the object which will contain the objects from the all route, all right? That means, and those objects, the inner objects will contain the attributes and payload separately. All right, so as you can see, the each object inside this is showing the respective values. As you can see, this is the value. Similarly, you can check all other elements and you will find that all those values are actually present. All right, so this is the way scatter gather actually works. All right, so now we are about to see that this message, we are about to see this is the linked hash map, and whenever we move ahead and we receive this message in the postman, this will be like this. All right, so it is basically objects. The payload is actually the object which is containing other objects. All right, so this is how it is actually showing. So now we will check what happens in case there is some exception in scatter gather. So let us just send the next request, and this is the URL, and here I am going to send a request to this. So now if you see, this is the flow where we are about to check this. All right, so let's move ahead and we will see what happens. Now it is about to enter these scatter gather routes. So now as you can see, the same payload is actually the same message which was received by this scatter gather. So everything as it is, the same Mule 4 event actually forwarded to each route. All right, so now see, all four routes are actually getting executed. Now as you can see, in the route 2 it is going to execute this raise error, and which will actually generate one error. Now as you can see, one error has been generated, and we will see what happens. All right, so now as you can see, the error has been in one route out of these 4 routes which we mentioned in the scatter gather. In the second route, one exception has happened, and it resulted to the exception of the scatter gather component. That all right, so now it is showing that scatter gather component is throwing an exception, right? So now if we just move ahead, we can see that the debugger execution is now complete, and we want to see what is the response. So now as you can see, exception occurred, and what is the result? So this is the route. If you remember, the Mule actually ranked these routes from 0. The first route it actually ranked as 0, and then the second route it ranked as 1, third one is ranked as 2, and the fourth one is ranked as 3. All right, so now I want to show the same thing here. If you can see in the logger component, it is basically this 0. As you can see, 0 is having a type object. That means it is about to contain the payload and attributes from the route 1. All right, sorry, route 0. And similarly, the one which is of type object, it is about to have the object which are set in. It is about to have the payload and attributes from the route 2. All right, so this is how it happens. So now this one actually refers to our route 2. All right, so this is how it shows, and as you can see, this response has been returned to our postman. And now we can see that whenever an exception happens in any route which we mentioned there, suppose we have mentioned 10 routes in scatter gather, and any of those route actually throws an error. In that case, scatter gather stops the execution, and the next element will not be processed. That means the logger component here, the debugger, we saw that the debugger didn't reach the logger component, right? So, and the scatter gather will return an error response, and the error response will show these details, that means the route where the actual error happened and also the error description, right? So the error description it has shown, and as you can see the default behavior, the 500 is the status code which is written to the postman. All right, so that is pretty much about the routers in Mule 4. So these are basic things which I actually wanted to show you in my video. So I hope you understand, and also in case you find any question related to this, I would request you to please comment, and also if you like my effort then please do subscribe and like and share. All right, thank you.